Who is the person that Dana White wanted the most?
Fedor Emelianenko.
Hello, and never got him. So to sit there and say that, the best are going to end up here anyways, sorry. It's already been proven that that's just not true. And there's a lot of guys out there that I can tell, come up with the names on that. Look, this guy's good, and he deserved to be, fighting against guys in the UFC and stuff. But he decided, hey, I don't want to put up with some of the things that are there, things like that, and decided I'm not going there. I'll continue to fight, and I'll continue to fight where I want to fight, and I'll make my money this way, and I'll make a lot of money, and they have. And so to sit there and say, oh, I don't need to cross promote. No, look, and I don't put this against Dana in any way.
Not at all.
I understand Dana's point on this, and I'm not saying he's wrong. But to say that, all the good ones are going to end up here anyways, that's not true, and that's come about. So that point is not, he's not lying. He's just not looking back and saying, oh yeah, well, that one or this one. But the one thing that I will say is, look, he did try it. He did, with pride. Yeah. Back, with Chuck Liddell and Enrico Rodriguez and things like that. He didn't get anything in return. They said, oh, we're going to send over Sakuraba. They never did. And so he was like, I got burned. I'm not going to allow someone to burn me again. And so he looks at it now like, hey, we are the biggest organization. He is absolutely right. And what's it do for my organization? Mm-hmm. What does it do for me as the promoter? And he's saying that, no, it's only a benefit for the other promotions, and I'm not here to benefit them. And so his choice is to say, I'm not going to do it. I wish he would. And again, just like what Josh is saying, you don't have to do your champions. No. Just certain fighters that I think you could put a team of 5 fights together with guys that are somewhere, in your top 15 that you could put on some really interesting fights based upon, and you have the right to, each promotion say, hey, we like this matchup. What do you think? And if you agree with it, then do it. It is not going to take away anything from the UFC.
It won't. And I think if he believes that he has the best fighters, that eventually then he would go out there and try and show some dominance. But I think also later on, I think doing it now for him wouldn't make any sense. But like I said, if Ryzen and Bellator or PFL and ONE all decide to start joining and it starts to work for them, and they do one of these shows a year, and then they go out there and they build their fighters again, who knows? You never know. Maybe fighters that are in one organization, they go into the cross promotion and they have a great fight, and then that fighter fights out his contract and ends up in another organization because they're willing to pay more money. That other organization may be watching that fighter a little bit more. Now, that's where it can get a little hairy, like, oh, you stole my fighter. Well,
there's no stealing fighters.
There's no stealing fighters. He fought out his contract and went and made more money somewhere else, or she did. That's it. I look at with Dana White, there's no reason for him to do it now. We've talked about this. I also believe you said Fedor. We said Fedor. But if you look at guys like Dana White kind of took the Floyd Mayweather approach with guys like Ben Askren, guys like Antonio McKee, AJ's dad. He didn't bring him in until they were older. Those guys were the best fighters in the world long before that. They didn't come in until they were almost 40 or they were 40. I think AJ was 41. Or not AJ, but Antonio was 40 or 41 at the time. Yeah. I mean, I remember, like I said, I've put this on record, man. I ducked that motherfucker at least 3 or 4 times. I didn't want to fight that guy. I didn't want to fight him. King of the Cage had offered me to fight him. Like the Ultimate Athlete, I think, offered me to fight him. I remember several times people offered me to fight him. I think the WFA had offered me to fight him. I was like, no. I knew he was physically strong. I knew he was a good wrestler. I knew he was a grinder on top. I knew that he was hard to get away from. I was like, nah, man, I'm not losing my chance to get in. At the time, but UFC was pretty much the only other organization. I knew that, hey, this is where I'm going to go. I fought in the WFA, but I fought Rob McCullough, who I knew I could take down, who I knew I could stand with a little bit. I knew I could fight that game. I just look at fighters when he says, yeah, they're going to end up there eventually. Yeah, but are they going to end up there in their prime? That's one. Are you just trying to bring the fighters in that are dangerous, that you're not really high on, to bring them in to get beat later on in their career? Like, that doesn't mean they're all going to get there, John. That's the thing. No. There's so many good fighters. Like Yaroslav Amosov, 26-0. He's got the best record in MMA right now.
Yeah.
Now, he's got his hands full with Logan Storley.
Yes.
And I can go into this big food chain. I can go into this big, like, this family tree type situation and just start breaking it down. Like, I've heard, we talked to corners, we talked to managers, we talked to coaches, we talked to gyms and other fighters. Logan Storley out-wrestles and dominates top position against Kamaru Usman. Now, I think Usman's a fantastic fighter. Now, on the feet, Usman has been proven to be the better striker than Logan Storley. Logan Storley is also getting better. He's only got 11 or 12 fights. He's got one loss to Yaroslav Amosov.
Yeah, 14
got
fights.
12. 14 fights now? Okay. So but he's still relatively young in the sport.
Yeah.
And his only losses to Yaroslav Amosov, who's 26-0. They'll be
Which was
fighting
a great
again
fight.
in Dublin, which is a fantastic fight. And they'll be fighting again,
Yep.
in Dublin, Ireland, and Bellator. But if I look at those guys, like Logan Storley may never fight in the UFC. Yamosov
Right.
may never fight in the UFC.
Right.
There's fighters, Paul Daly would have never fought in the UFC. He would have just kept doing what he did, but he got bought out in the Strikeforce buyout.
Strikeforce. That's right.
And so there was fighters that didn't care whether they ever went back to the UFC when they were fighting for Strikeforce. Robbie Lawler being one of them, Nick Diaz being one of them. There's a lot. You have to remember the amount of fighters that they acquired in that thing.
It was huge.
Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes, Misha Tate. I mean, there was a plethora of
all
Nate
these
Marquardt,
fighters that everyone
T.
talks
Wood.
about. It's like those came from Strikeforce, baby.
Yes.
It's like people don't recall and they don't remember, but absolutely. T. Wood. Think of the champions: Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes, Misha Tate, Tyron Woodley,
Yep.
Daniel Cormier. All these people.
Luke Rockhold.
Oh yeah, Luke.
Cain
Rockhold.
Velasquez. Cain Velasquez came from
Cain
me.
Velasquez really is different. I'm not,
Yeah, he
I'm
still
not
fought in
gonna go there.
Strikeforce.
He fought in Strikeforce, but he didn't come over in that
No, he
buyout. He didn't come out in the buyout. So
but there's a lot of other fighters that are on. Bobby Green. Bobby Green came
Yep,
over from
Bobby
Strikeforce.
Green
I mean,
did.
there's a lot of
Oh, a
fighters that
bunch.
came over.
Tim Kennedy,
Yeah, Tim
Yoel
Kennedy.
Romero.
Yep. I mean, Nate Diaz had his first couple fights in Strikeforce.
Well, Nick Diaz came
Before-
back to the UFC
Yeah.
from Strikeforce.
Yep.
So
Yep. Same with Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler came
Yep.
back to the UFC from Strikeforce. I just to say that they are all in the UFC. It's not true.
Sorry,
Or
not
it's
true.
to say that they're one day going to get there,
or they're
that's
going to be
not-
there. No,
That's not true either. And so, look, Dana's going to do what
Good
Dana
comment.
does. Dana's a promoter. Dana's going to do what Dana does. But I understand where he's coming from. You and I both do. And I think a lot of people understand that. But I think if these other organizations start to do their job and put together something like this annually or every other year, I think it could really change the game in the MMA sport. It really could change how people look at this. If you start having events, like if you start doing what's the thing that they did that fight week for, UFC used to do fight week. If
International
you do a
Fight Week?
Yeah, International Fight Week. If you do a fight week, where you do this big cross promotion, you do a fight week that week of sponsors, of each organization has, their fighters there, up and coming fighters, whatever it is. You start pumping this thing out. It's like Super Bowl week, or it's the World Cup stuff. It's like you make your fighters accessible. It's huge, man. It's huge.
Yeah.
This thing could really be a big deal. It's just going to take time. This ain't going to happen probably in the next 2, 3, 5, 8 years. But it's something that could start building up right now and getting buzzed about if you want to start getting these fighters paid.
100% agree. Nah, look it.